Hi, I'm Jim Eskin. On behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it's my privilege and pleasure to welcome you to our 89th nonprofit empowerment learning session. And I think today, for the next hour, we're going to be the only group in America not discussing politics. We're going to discuss philanthropy. And I have two very special guests. And let me say, I have permission from my special guests. If I refer to him in Dr. Singh, we'll all be confused. So it's Dr. Jeet Singh and Dr. Simran Jeet Singh. And they both have remarkable perspectives to share. He started a company called Karta Technologies, which became, the biggest defense contractor in San Antonio. And he's been dedicating, if I guess there was a Good Guys Hall of Fame, he would have a place in it. He's been involved in so many good causes in San Antonio. And the other Dr. Singh, it could be Dr. Singh squared, but he is executive director for the Aspen Institute's program of Religion Society. And he's just authored a wonderful book that we're going to talk about a little more into the show. And it's called The Light We Give, How Sikh Wisdom Can Transform Your Life. And literally, he is squeezing us in at the at JFK International Airport. I can't tell you how much that means. We got lots of questions. And so if it's okay with the Dr. Singhs, I'm going to begin, and I'm going to start with Simran, okay? Youth before beauty. What would you say is the most important lesson you learned from your father?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think about these often because there are a lot of good lessons. But here's one that's been on my mind a lot recently, and it is a lesson in optimism. You know, after 9/11, I was a senior in high school in San Antonio, and the hatred that went around the country, targeting anybody who looked like they might be involved in the attacks, those attacks and that hatred affected us too. And you know, the death threats started coming pretty much immediately the day of the attacks, and after a few days, my father said something to me that really transformed my thinking. He said, "Aren't we lucky?" And I looked at him and I said, "What would we be lucky for? You know, our country's under attack, our community's under attack." And he said, "Well, have you noticed that your neighbors and your teammates and your classmates have all been checking in on you and bringing food, supporting you, calling, making sure you're okay?" And you know, he didn't have to say it, but it's a lesson that him and my mom had brought up to us many times before, which is there's plenty of ugliness in the world. There's plenty of difficulty, but if we choose to look for the goodness, that's all around us too. And in most cases, and I found this to be true in my experience, in most cases, the good far outweighs the bad, and you just have to learn to see it. And that was a really profound lesson for me. And during a really difficult time.
Thank you. Let me flip the coin. Dr. Jeet Singh, what would you say is a significant lesson you've learned from your son, Simran?
I learned from him, learned a lot about standing up for others, equality and justice. And even if it is difficult, or challenging, I learned from him for sure.
Hey, John, could you do me a favor and put on the screen? We have a slide. It's Simran's book. Could you tell us what motivated you to write this book, and what do you want the audience to derive from it?
Yeah, appreciate that. You know, I really started writing this book in earnest in 2016, and there were a couple of really important things going on in our country then, and in my life too. And I think, you know, the overall feeling. I was teaching at Trinity University in San Antonio at the time, and I would meet so many students who were just upset and frustrated with the world, and they would come from all different backgrounds, they would have all kinds of different beliefs. But the one common thread was that everyone I seemed to meet was just outraged and upset. And I think that for me, I mean, it was a microcosm of what was going on in the rest of the country. And as I started to talk to my students, what I kept hearing was, I feel very challenged and upset and angry, but I don't know what to do about it. And to me, it sounded very familiar. And I'd been in those shoes before. I'd been in that situation. I felt all those feelings before. And through my journey as a Sikh in this country and the challenges I felt, I thought I had a different way of looking at things that drew from Sikh philosophy that helped me find a way to face the challenges that we face as a community, as a country, as people every day. I mean, everyday difficulties, and to face them without internalizing the negativity, of really embracing what life is all about, and recognizing the difficulty, but not being sucked into any sort of negative feelings that come with difficulty. And so that to me was the inspiration behind the book, really trying to offer something that had been a gift for me in a way that might benefit other people. And so that's where I really started.
By the way, is that book on Amazon?
It is on Amazon, yes, that's correct.
And is it available? I like to read everything on Kindle. Is it available on Kindle?
It is on Kindle, and the other version it's available. There's an audiobook that I narrate myself, and my Texas accent comes in a little bit here and there from which you don't hear otherwise usually. So yeah, that was surprised as I was reading that I noticed my Texas accent resurfacing.
Well, congratulations, and thank you for writing that book. And I now have several questions. I'm going to start with the father, and this kind of builds into your motivation for the book. GP, both of you have experienced the sting of prejudice and hatred over the course of your respective lifetimes. And the question is sort of two halves. What progress do you think we've made during your lifetime, GP? And what challenges do we still face in overcoming prejudice and hatred?
We have come a long way, and still a long way to go. We have made some progress when it comes to representation, for sure. And there are Sikhs in all walks of life, from politics to to sports, to business and academia. Sikhs are change makers in every aspect of society, but we have a lot of work to do still. People make lots of assumptions about us, and say we should go back to where we came from. So we continue to fight, not only for our rights, but also for humanity.
By the way, Simran, I know it's daunting to follow your father, but I'd like to share the same question with you. Over the course of your life, and I believe I read something about you a long time ago in the San Antonio Express News on this subject, if I remember serves correctly. But during your lifetime, what progress do you think we've made in overcoming prejudice and hatred? And what challenges do we face?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think in many ways we have made progress, and in many ways I think we are actually regressing. And I'm happy to speak to both. But I think, in terms of progress, it strikes me that as I work with younger people, we are increasingly aware of difference. When I was growing up in San Antonio, which wasn't all that long ago, diversity wasn't as rich as it is now. And even then, it's a multicultural city. It's multiracial, it's multi-faith. There are people from all walks of life. And I think as our globe has become smaller, as technology has changed, it has become increasingly difficult to avoid people who are different from ourselves. we're just constantly meeting people from different cultures, whether it's in person or online. And I think that's to our benefit. I think it's become easier to see that other people are just other people. They're not monsters, and they're not scary, and they're not people we need to worry about so much. At least not in this way that xenophobia constantly tells us to. So I think there's progress there, and I'm really hopeful about the more we know one another, the easier it becomes to see our humanity. Now the part of regress, I think, is it continues to be the case, and this is not, particular to our lifetimes either. It continues to be the case that politicians will use division or use our differences to divide us. And we are seeing that not just here in the American context, but all across the world. People are really leaning into ethnic, religious, racial identities as ways of saying, we're better than you and you're worse than us, and you don't belong here and we belong here. And so that phenomenon, which by every measure is increasing in some of the places that are considered to be the world's biggest democracies. I mean, you can look at the US, you can look at India, you can look at Turkey, you can look at Pakistan, right? Like it's everywhere. There's no place that's really protected from this. And that to me is really concerning. And it's the flip side of the coin, right? On the one hand, we see it becoming easier to relate to and connect with one another. And on the other hand, we're falling into these traps of dehumanizing on the basis of our differences. And that seems really, it's dangerous and precarious, and we're seeing the consequences of that play out constantly.
One thing I've noticed, we love the way technology connects us, but I think there's a tendency for text, email, particularly the social media, that people will do and act uglier. They would never act face to face. Simran,
that's right. Yeah, it's absolute. Yeah, it's true. I think there is something about, let me say it this way. We have the pretense of being connected with one another, and in some ways we are. Technology is a connective force, but without the real human relationship, we can hide behind our anonymity and really take these connections as points of attack. And we see that over and over again. And it's part of what makes being online so difficult and dangerous for a lot of people. I mean, if you look at Twitter, if you look at TikTok, I mean, areas of that are just cesspools of nastiness. And it can be on the basis of your gender. It can be on the basis of your, country of origin. It can be on the basis of your religion. I mean, whatever it is, it happens over and over again. And so, yeah, it's absolutely true that without proper regulation, these will continue to be forces that continue to divide us.
Dr. Singh, GT Singh, thank you for all the different leadership roles you've played in our community. I think of Goodwill Industries. I think the San Antonio Area Foundation. I think of the Interfaith San Antonio Alliance. But in particular, in your role at the Area Foundation, you were on the board and played a very pivotal role in what was a gift from the John Santigos that I believe in the year that it was realized was the largest gift in America. It was something like over $600 million. And it put endowments in place that's touching every part of our community. And can you give us a little insider's view of what that conversation was with Mr. Santigos and helping him move in the direction of such a historic gift?
Thank you. Yeah, suddenly I got a call from Janice Bunch. She used to be my senior vice president of human relations. I would used to call it people department. And then she had joined Santico's organization. And he called me and he said, hey, we had a lunch. And she said, hey, Mr. Santicos wants to start a foundation. Would you be willing to help? Okay, oh yeah, of course. This is my favorite topic. So he invited us. John Santicos went to their office. And as soon as I walked into his office, I could see that he's building another theater in Houston. And then just he's talking about just business. He didn't mention a whole lot about foundation. And then he says, hey, would you like to be a CEO of Centicos? I said, no, I have no interest to be a CEO. I'm not looking for money. I thought I was supposed to talk about foundations. And then, that age difference was about 20 years between two of us. And he says, oh, you're just a kid. And the conversation started. We had a lot of conversations, typically alternate months. And he will say, this is my challenge and this and that. Typically, then I started to introduce other people, like Mr. Ed Kelly. He's a former USA president. He used to be on my board.
Yes, Ed Kelly.
Yes, sir. And then I suggested Bob Vermeyer. He used to be my general counsel. And before that, he was from KCI. And Mr. Santico says, oh, no, I don't like to deal with lawyers. I said, this guy is like, he works with love and integrity. This is the right guy. It took me like 3 months to convince him. And, that was he was helping him. Mr. Santicos, took them from different locations. He's looking for more land and stuff like that. Then another 2 years, we were talking about foundation and how do you help for especially young people who are working from graduating from high school, and how about giving them scholarships and stuff like that. He was not able to move the needle at all. So I suggested, if you can, I think you should create your own legacy. Because like in my business, local business folks in San Antonio, they gave me so much help. Typically, we have board meetings, and we had a board of directors, a board of advisors, and stuff like that. This is a beautiful community, and they will help you. I'm just telling you. So that was the conversation. So another 2 years later, one time we had a conversation, and he asked, he is about to sign his estate plan, going towards Mr. Ed Kelly and another gentleman, Kronsky Foundation and Bank of America. They're about to sign paperwork. I said, Mr. Santicos, please don't do that. I am telling you, the local community will take care of your legacy. And then Mr. Dennis Knoll, he was the CEO of Area Foundation. So I introduced them, and they had a wonderful conversation. But they won't tell me anything because this is a client privilege issues.
Yeah.
So typically, Dennis Knoll will send me a message or calls me, hey, I haven't heard from him. We need to do something. So then I would organize lunches with Mr. Santicos, trying to get information. Anyways, I mean, I have no idea how much money they're talking about. I was just guessing 250, something like that. No idea.
Hmm.
And so I was supposed to become the chair in 2015. It was already announced, but then I had a stroke and I couldn't handle the stress and stuff like that. So I stayed on the vice chair. And another 2015, we've learned that the largest gift that we got was 608 million, that I remember. So that was a wonderful gift for San
And
Antonio.
thank you again for your leadership making that possible. I'm going to keep with you, GP. You know, you also serve on the Interfaith San Antonio Alliance Board, and then we're going to go to Simran because I think this really relates to your work with the Aspen Institute. San Antonio seems to have a great tradition of ecumenical good feelings and collaboration. What do you think explains that?
San Antonio, multicultural roots, served as a foundation for different religions and traditions, to accept each other, warm and welcoming people in San Antonio. I mean, walked in the river walk area, went to the San Jose mission. That was very heart touching. You can see the spirituality being in the San Jose mission. And it comes down to people who are willing to go first, put their names down and say, I'll take a chance on learning more about other people. There are a few people who took the lead and created a great interfaith community for our city, and big thank you to them. Now Wendy is on the board. She's doing an excellent job, if you know her, and also in our scripture, in our faith. You cannot believe that there's one scripture is also written by obviously Sikh gurus as well as Hindus and as well as Muslims. That is just amazing. That's kind of from our faith tradition. We always talk about all the people are one. We talk about oneness. So that's I think.
Simran, I meant to ask you this earlier. Your day job is serving as executive director of the Aspen Institute's Religion and Society program. Can you describe that program and maybe share what are some of the lessons for communities that can be ecumenical and collaborative?
Yeah, appreciate that. It's, I think part of my, let me say it this way, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And at least in this case, I'm trying to stay close to the tree. And part of my work in this world, at least as it pertains to my role with the Aspen Institute, is leading an organization that is essentially serving two core functions. The first is to help ensure that Americans properly understand the significant role that religion plays in our society. And, at least from my vantage point as a scholar and historian of religion, I think for many Americans, it becomes very easy and more comfortable to ignore religion and say, well, that's something of the past, or that's something of people from other countries, but it doesn't really have an impact on us here. And the reality is it absolutely does. And, and we're lying to ourselves when we say it doesn't. And so I think we'll be better served if we have an accurate understanding of what our society is. Whatever that leads us to is up to us. But it's just really ensuring that people can really have a clear understanding of what is driving so many people in our society. And the other aspect of what we do, and this is our core vision, is to help ensure that everyone, regardless of their faith background, or even if they don't have faith at all, that everyone has an equal opportunity to thrive in this country. And so we're cognizant in many ways right now that not everyone has equal opportunity on the basis of different aspects of where they come from. And we want to ensure that religion is not a barrier to happiness. And it should be the opposite, and that's its intention. And so how can we help ensure those conditions?
Dr. G.P. Singh, what do you think distinguishes philanthropy in San Antonio from other parts of the country?
It's all about collaboration. My experience of nonprofit work in San Antonio is that philanthropists don't just want to write a check. They want to see the organization succeed and are willing to help however they can. This may not be completely unique to San Antonio, but it seems to be part of our DNA. Philanthropy in San Antonio doesn't happen in a vacuum. We do it together. The business people, CEOs, and government leaders and nonprofit leaders, everyone plays a role. And it's all about collaboration again.
Simran, New York City is a very different place. What do you think distinguishes philanthropy in New York City than other parts of the country?
One way to think about it is billionaires and millionaires, right? Like that's sort of the culture of New York City, and it's not. That's sort of a sweeping generalization. You have each of those in each of the two places, and so. But I do think in New York City, what I found is the capacity to give is much higher. I also find that the culture in New York City is more transactional, and maybe there's something here to say about the sort of
what does that mean?
impact.
What does that mean?
More transactional in the sense that, I want to give to you, but what do I get in return? And you see it with regard to naming practices. You see it with regard to particular, how can we say, status markers in society. It's a lot of the giving that I've been a part of in New York, or at least I've been on the receiving side of for our organization. A lot of the giving also entails a desire to be seen as giving. And what I see in San Antonio as being different, and in other parts of the country too, is there is more personal connection to the place, and therefore giving is not just about, giving is highly driven by one's care for the community, and therefore the transactional piece of it is not as strong. Of course, people want to be recognized, and that's very human, but it's not often a condition of the giving, and it's not driven by that. And so that is an important difference that I've seen.
Okay, Dr. G.P. Singh, a year after you've made a gift to a nonprofit, how do you know it was a good decision?
Good question. I think it's always a good decision to give to those in need. And sometimes you see the results within a year, and sometimes you don't. It takes time to see these programs and how they play out. And we try to be patient and understand what the nonprofit is experiencing in order to put the money to work. There are plenty of metrics to look at, but ultimately to make the decision on trust, trust in people. Do we trust the people that are putting the money to work? to do what they said they would do? And can we trust them to be long-term goal-oriented, not to try to get out quick wins just for optics and posting Facebook? You can win a game like this. It's a long, it's a long play.
Let me ask you, and then I'm going to go to Simran. GP, what gives you the greatest satisfaction from making a gift?
The satisfaction is just seeing the impact it has on the families that need the most, especially when we have food to share and someone asks for 2 bags instead of 1. That strikes me as a real need. It gives me a lot of satisfaction to know we are making a difference, and also hands-on involvement with the organization, may it be food bank, Haven for Hope, Good Samaritan, or any other organization.
Yeah. Simran, in your book, what does Sikh wisdom tell us about what satisfaction you get from giving to others?
Oh, I love the question. It strikes me that you might have actually read it. So thank you for asking that.
How about will you
There's
buy?
a
I
few
scanned it.
Thank you. Well, there are a couple of ways in which I think about this from the perspective of Sikh wisdom. The first is, the basic worldview in Sikh philosophy offers 3 basic building blocks. The beginning is that we are all interconnected. There is a oneness that binds us all together. The second is, if you can feel that, then you have a feeling of love, just like you would in any other relationship. You love your children, and so you feel connected to them. You feel connected to your partner, and that's love. And so that's 2. And then the third is, when you're in a relationship of love, then service action is your natural impulse. You want to ensure that they don't feel pain, that they feel happiness within their lives. And so part of the answer to your question in terms of why generosity is so satisfying from a Sikh perspective is, we already know the answer to that. We have these relationships, and we know that we show up for the people we care about, and that is what moves us. And so that's one aspect of it. Now, there's another piece of this philosophy that I find to be especially powerful, and in many ways counter to what we might expect, or maybe it's not counter, but it's an idea that I don't find often discussed, at least in Western communities. And that is, if our personal egos are a source of our pain, and many traditions teach this, including some Christian philosophical traditions, mystical traditions, if ego is what is the barrier for us from finding happiness, serving others is one of the only ways I've ever found to reduce the ego. And I experienced this a lot during the pandemic. I share a story of this in the book, where I was so wrapped up in concern for what was happening to us, and that snowballed, and I couldn't get out of that cycle. And the only way that I found to get out of it was to start serving other people, and to recognize, hey, you know what? The world isn't just about you. There are other people in this world, and they need your help too. And it all comes from a place of connection. And so part of the philosophy is to say, if you can really give to people who need it, you will also find more happiness in your own life, because you will be less self-centered and really touched by your ability to serve. So that's something that I've found to be really profound from Sikh teachings.
Thank you. GP, if you could give something to everyone you meet, what would that be?
If you could something to everyone you meet, what would it be? Just love and hugs, just love. That's all I can come up with.
It says a lot. Simran, I think it's tough when you go second with the same question, but if you could give something to everyone you meet, and maybe to derive from the Sikh wisdom, what would that be? What would you give to everyone you could meet?
Yeah, oh gosh, there's so much that I think people are struggling with right now. One of the observations I've made in people, and maybe I can ask my dad to speak to this a little bit too. We very much have a culture in which we know what the right things are to say. We are taught to announce our values to one another, what we care about, what sounds good. Maybe that's the way to say it. We all know what sounds good, but we don't really have a culture of living into what we announce. And at least in our family, and my father sort of introduced us to this way of thinking when we were teenagers, was what does it look like to be clear about your values, and then what does it look like to practice your values? And those are two very different things. I mean, of course they're interrelated, but that was an exercise that we went through as a family, that my parents led. They brought in a facilitator, and we created a family values and mission statement. And
Wow.
that had a really big impact on me. I mean, it's not something that we hear much about,
How
but it's
old
something
were
that
you at
served
that
me
time?
for the past.
How old, out of curiosity, how old were you?
I must have been 15 or so, 15,
Okay,
16.
teenager.
Yeah, but it's such a simple exercise. I mean, we all do it in our workplaces, but the innovation to bring that into our family and to really say, let's be intentional about this was, I mean, it had a really big impact on me. And so if I could give a gift, I think that would be a really easy one to give, and it's one that I think could have could be really helpful to a lot of people.
GP, you have helped probably literally thousands of men, women, and children. Can you share a story how you've been helped in your life?
Can you repeat the question again?
You have helped countless men and women and children in your lifetime. Can you share a story, and it might be from long ago or whatever? Can you share a story how you received and benefited from someone's help?
Well, okay. So actually, my eldest brother, there's an age gap between 17 and a half year difference.
Wow.
So he was a PhD, and he was an entomologist, and I was just graduating from bachelor's in aeronautical engineering. And he said, "Hey, you should come to America." By the way, he was in New Zealand, and he said, "Hey, you should come to America, and you should go get a master's and PhD and things like that." And he was instrumental to encourage me to come to US. The second thing was my professor. His name was Professor Dr. Joe Rose. He became an advisor, and he was a mentor.
Mhm.
And as soon as I was about to finish my master's, and I said, he suggested that you should continue your PhD. I said, but would I get a job with a turban and beard? And in those days, I'm talking about 1975, 1976. And he says, "GP, you do whatever you do, I'll definitely will help you." And he came up with he was very, very supportive, wearing a turban and beard. And he gave me
Simran, can you share a
kind of
story?
carte blanche. He will send me.
I'm sorry.
So
Simran, can you answer the same question? How can you give an example how you were helped by somebody else during your life?
Yeah, I mean there are so many examples, and I'll try to share one that's here's one that is in a way unexpected. It's not a story that I share often, but I remember growing up in San Antonio, going to a soccer game, and we were playing in Austin, right off Riverside Drive. We were playing the Riverside Rangers, I think they were called, and I was in middle school, and this was before 9/11, so the really intense racism hadn't started yet, but there were still some, and one of the players on the other teams, after I took the ball from him and cleared it away, I was on defense. And then he, after the referee turned his head, came and slid and tackled me. And then he offered me a few racial slurs, actually slurs that I didn't even know what they meant at the time because I hadn't heard them before. And I was on the ground, and I didn't know what he was saying, but I could tell he was being malicious. And I stood up and I was ready to fight him. And my teammate, Levi, I didn't know, but he had seen what had happened and had heard what had happened. And he just sort of pushed me aside and said, "I got this one." He said, I heard what he said, and I got this. And then he started fighting the guy. And it was really interesting. I mean, at this age, you don't really know what your teammates, I mean, you play together, you're friends, you hang out together, but I didn't really know if he understood what I went through, if he would have cared. And he didn't really have to, I don't even think we ever talked about it, but the fact that he did that made a really huge impression on me. And we both got kicked out of the game.
How old were you at that time?
Oh, must have been 6th or 7th grade. So young. That's probably 13 or so.
Yeah,
pretty young still. But it's a moment that I'll remember forever. I mean, I was ready to fight back, and I was ready to stand up for myself, but to have someone else be willing to take that for me, I mean, it felt like he really did feel compassion for me, and really, really big moment.
We're going to sort of move into reverse here for a moment, but GP, you've been very generous with nonprofits. So I'm going to ask you, but what's a no-no? What should a nonprofit not do when they're working with you?
Can you repeat the question again?
What should a nonprofit not do when they're working with you? What turns you off from nonprofits?
Yeah, definitely don't make it a transactional deal. Of course, they want to receive grant and gifts, and we all know that. But if all the energy goes there, it doesn't build a deeper connection. I think we are all humans doing our best to make our lives and this world a better place. Let's get to know each other at a deeper level. You should ask a lot of questions. Where do you grow up? Why do you do the things you do? A relation that goes deeper than dollar means. When things get hard, we all be there for each other. So that's all I can say.
I see we have a question from the audience that I'd like both of you to respond to. What do you think of the wisdom, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime? Dr. Singh, and then also with Simran, maybe you could interpret that through Sikh wisdom, but I'm going to start with your father.
You know, I really like your, the comment is excellent. You know, I like to do the same thing. And I always thought about to create a sustainment of a nonprofit organization, um, uh, which is like good examples are like Goodwill and
Yes, that's what I
Lyft,
was thinking of.
yeah, and Lyft Fund, and that's, you know, that's still on my bucket list. I want to do stuff like that. So.
Simran, how does that filter through Sikh wisdom? You know, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime.
No, I can share a reaction from my perspective as a Sikh, and it's something I've learned through Sikh philosophy to be very powerful, and that is to say, both can be true. And in this case, there are people who are hungry and urgently need food, and we should feed them, and that's critical. And to be so focused on the long game that we miss what's right in front of us, that can lead us to be very uncompassionate to people who need our compassion the most, and at the same time to be so focused on the narrow, and to not see the big picture can also be a distorted view of the world. And so to me, what I learned from Sikh philosophy, and this comes out over and over again in different ways, is to say we don't necessarily need to create these binaries of one approach is better than the others. I think we can say both are necessary. I might be more inclined towards one, I might be more inclined towards the other, or I might try and do both in different ways. But I do love this saying, because I think it pushes us to expand beyond what is more intuitive for humans. And I think what Sikh philosophy says is actually you can go even further and do both at the same time.
I'll start with GP. Who are some of your role models in philanthropy?
In San Antonio is
Or it can be local or national, however you want to focus.
Yeah, I know people in San Antonio like Kits Goldsberry, Bill Greehey,
Yeah.
and Gordon. He's done an amazing job.
Hartman?
Yes.
Simran, who are some of your role models in philanthropy?
Well, I think I'd be in trouble if I didn't say my parents. So that's
okay, you covered your bases. Who else?
That's a good starting point. You know, I was just at the annual gala for the Aspen Institute in New York City, and I learned about Jackie and Mike Bezos. And I talked with quite a few people who know them well, and the work they've been doing. And I really appreciated the two things that really stood out to me is they have a specific focus on a topic that they believe will change the world, and that's education. And they have been singularly focused on that issue for years. And the other thing that really stood out to me, and it's not just because people told me afterwards in their dealings, but also because it came out so clearly in their remarks, is that they approach their work with such humility. You know, they're not coming forward as if they are the most important people in the world, or if they're, you know, solving all the problems of the world, or that they're even better than the people they're sitting next to. I mean, they were such humble, kind people.
And by the way, I have to
that to me
interrupt.
is what I look for.
That struck me so much about your parents is their humility. I remember, I think it might have been your wedding celebration they had in San Antonio. And there were hundreds of people there. And GP and Winky were kind enough to invite my wife, Andrea, and me. And there, of course, there was a staff serving food. but we moved into the kitchen, my wife Andrea and I, and Winky came up to my wife and said, "Do you want some more food?" And she's no fool. She said yes. And your mother didn't turn to the staff. Your mother served Andrea herself. We will never forget that. She went to get a plate of food. It was great food, by the way. But she had all these staff, all these important people here, but she went out of the way to serve my wife. It's a story that I'll never forget. Is the I respect humility is one of my highest values. We're going to go a little deep. We're kind of wrapping up here. I think GP, you mentioned it before. What's left? You've done so much over your remarkable lifetime. What's on your bucket list?
I already mentioned, I am looking for another project, create a new profit organization to create a sustainment. I'm looking for a model right now.
Okay, explain. I'm sorry. Go a little deeper.
Like, it's one thing to just donate money, right?
Yeah.
But like another example is you can also help others, but we can get not they will get exchange from, we can get some money to start a company like that, kind of social enterprise. So that will be very helpful. So one idea is I'm looking into hydroponics. You can get a warehouse and put just with water. You can grow lettuce and parsley and things like that. So we can sell it, but it will take time. Over time, 5 years, 7 years from now, we can make it a self-sustainment to create, to provide food. So that's the kind of projects that I'm looking at right now.
Simran, what's on your bucket list?
If I told you the ones that are really exciting to me, you might laugh. One of my big bucket list items I might accomplish on this trip to South Africa if I have time, but it's to go cage diving with sharks. So with great whites, to go cage diving with great white sharks.
You got guts.
That's
Have you seen the
I
movie
might not
Jaws?
after the trip. Yeah.
Have you seen the movie
seen
Jaws?
It, yeah. I have. Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that sort of thing. And to me, maybe this is something I get from my parents as well. The natural beauty of the world, trying to encounter what I can. Really just being outdoors, and especially with wildlife, is something that I really enjoy. So that's a number of my bucket list items are related to wildlife encounters.
Okay, we're going to end with a deep question. I'm going to start with GP and then go to Simran. GP, if all of a sudden you could travel in time, okay, what advice, and you could go back in time, what advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
Good question. Typically we don't even understand our own faith, our religion. I came to US and it took me time. Right now I'm focused on meditation, so it takes time. So if I wish I was 21-year-old, I should have started meditation at that age rather than starting late.
Well, you'll make up for lost time. Okay, Simran, I have a magic wand here, and I can send you back in time. What advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
Yeah, I think the big one for me is to have more confidence in my abilities and let that drive ambition. It's a way of saying to believe in myself more. And part of the reason that comes up as advice is so many of my dreams I've been able to achieve, but all of those, like, that journey has been filled with doubt. Is this possible? Is this something I can achieve? And in the ways that so many of us know in our lives. In retrospect, we can understand that the doubt didn't need to be there, and it didn't have to be as psychologically difficult as we thought, and that we could aim even higher. And that's something that I'm trying to learn from and continually push myself in, to recognize, okay, you do have these abilities or capacities or skills, and really trust in yourself and believe in yourself. So I wish I had that wisdom inside of me, when I was 21.
John, if you could put up Simran's contact information. And again, the book is called The Light We Give, and it's available on Amazon. You have your website too. You can buy the book from. You have a great website. And also you do a lot of public speaking. And John, could you put up Dr. Singh number 2, contact information? I think that was one of the 6 slides. And I want, first of all, GT, thank you for the leadership, your big heart, your knowing head, and everything you've done to share your good fortune with the people of South Texas. I know so many good causes, and they all have been enriched by your time, talent, and treasure. So thank you for the way you've been a true community leader and a friend to so many of those who need help. Simran, I believe this is the first time we've met. He has just squeezed this webinar in an incredibly tight schedule. He's hopping on a plane. And if you have a question for him, this is how you reach him. Particularly, I can tell you, he returns email very quickly. And the book has made the LA Times bestseller list. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yes.
And again, it's a wonderful book. And if you'd like tonight's conversation, I guarantee you'll love the contents of the book. And I'd like to thank both my guests, not just for participating in this webinar, but the way during their lives they have touched, improved, and saved more lives. Dr. G.P. Singh, thank you for being such a wonderful role model. Simran, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as you said. Thank you for all the great things that you are doing through the Aspen Institute and through your different projects. And come on, and thank you for a wonderful book that is so enriching to read. So I say to Simran, who'll be getting on an airplane soon, safe travels. And I want to thank Dr. G.P. Singh. Thank you again for your leadership. And we're not going to let you go. You're going to continue to be a very effective leader. And I heard about hydroponics. Maybe that's something you'll make happen. But we appreciate everything you've done for South Texas. And I want to say thank you. Our audience is made up of volunteer and professional nonprofit leaders. And we want to say thank you for your work in practicing philanthropy and reminding us that everyone can practice. You don't have to have $1 billion. Your gifts can be more humble. And we appreciate everyone in our audience. And so at this time, as I said, if you go to LinkedIn and Facebook, we're going to put a little written summary on. And then, John, tomorrow morning, we're going to put a recording on LinkedIn and Facebook of tonight's program. Again, thank you to the Dr. Singh's squared, I guess. Thank you for all the way that you've touched and enriched the world. And thank you for making this such a enlightening hour in learning about your perspectives. Thank you very much. And to our webinar audience, we'll see you again on November 30th. And thank you so much. And be well and safe travels.